So the next question here is, if the survey for AIDS has to be done for various years, what kind of sampling could be used? So it's a systematic sampling. You are doing it year by year. So everything is systematic. Every 1 year you have the survey. So this is an example of systematic sampling that is there. The next is, which of the following is an essential characteristic of research? The most essential characteristic of research is its replicability. That means if I am doing the research today, if I do it at, repeat the research, be it at some other place or some other time, my research findings should remain consistent, and that's very important characteristic where we say replicability gives much more detailed information about the scientific research. So it's the most important characteristic, we would say. This question is very important. Read the language very carefully. In the student in which there are large number of failures, you would develop a test to eliminate those who are likely to have difficulties in meeting the academic goal. For this, you would create a test that would be able to predict the ability to understand the study, what is going on in the school. Now, when you are able to predict that, what does this mean? This is a kind of prognostic test. So, very important question. It is an example of a prognostic test. The next is a question on syllogism. So, you have bats, mammals and birds. The first statement is all. So whenever there is all, we first take that. So all bats are mammals. That means bats are not in this region. Refer the class on syllogism again if you have doubt. A very simple strategy. Birds are not bats. So birds cannot be bats. So the only region that is left here is this. I would shade this also because this is not a possible combination. Now based on this, there are 4 conclusions that are given. Birds are not mammals. Birds are not mammals. That cannot be proved. Bats are not birds. So bats are not birds. Bats are not birds. That is proved because there is no bat lying in this region, because this whole region is shaded. That means there is nothing that lies here. So this statement becomes true. Then you have all mammals are bats. So all mammals are bats. That is incorrect because mammal can be here, here or here. So this becomes incorrect. Some mammals are bat. That could be correct because I am saying all bats are mammals. So all bats are mammals means bats would be here. Okay. So some mammals are bats definitely because there is something that is present here. So this would be true. So 2 and 4 would be the right conclusions here. The next question is the difference between a temporal stability and internal consistency. Temporal stability means I am doing a test today, day 1, and I am doing a test on day 30. My results would be more or less the similar ones. Internal consistency means I make 2 statements. Listen to this very carefully, very confusing. I make 2 statements. The first thing is I have negative feelings regarding computers. The second statement is I enjoy computers. Okay, now I cannot say both of those are correct because they are contradictory. Okay, if I say that my findings are inconsistent, patternless, so what is important under internal consistency is if there are 2 items that are in the test, you have to maintain a kind of consistency in the kind of responses that are coming from these tests, and that's something that is very crucial for the test. The next is understanding a predictive validity and a convergent validity. So convergent validity is a construct validity. Predictive validity is a criteria validity. So here I am trying to take a criteria to understand the ability to predict something. However, convergent validity is a construct validity where I am trying to find out where the 2 things are trying to give in a better response to me. Okay. Now this question that I am trying to explain here is a very important question. Understand this very carefully, very confusing. If you don't follow step by step, I'll have to repeat it many times. Okay, so Rakesh, Ramesh, Riya, Miss Radhika and Mr. Radhe and Miss Reena. Mr., Mrs. and Miss, that is very crucial. The position occupied by them are these, they are not in the order. The assistant manager is the manager's grandson. Okay. Now, assistant manager is the manager's grandson. The cashier is a male stenographer's son-in-law and is not Mr. Radhe. Mr. Rakesh is a bachelor. Ramesh is 20 years old. Miss Radhika is a teller. Okay, and Mr. Radhe is the neighbor. Mr. Ramesh cannot have grandson or son-in-law and he is 20 years old. Who is the manager? Now, how do we find out? This is the final who would be who. That is what I have written here. But the idea is to understand how to go around it. The first thing that we need to understand is the assistant manager is manager's grandson. So, how do we come on to the manager first? So, manager has a grandson, that means he is married, so he cannot be a bachelor. So who is bachelor? Rakesh is bachelor. So Rakesh, I'll just ignore. Clear? The next is he is manager's grandson. Okay, assistant manager is manager's grandson, that means manager is bigger in age. So Miss Radhika and Miss Reena cannot be the option. Okay, now I am left with three choices: Ramesh, Riya and Radhe. Now Radhe is the neighbor of the manager, so Radhe cannot be again the option. Mr. Ramesh is just 20 years old, so he cannot have a grandson. The manager has a grandson. Okay, so I ignore Ramesh as well. So what is left is Miss Riya, and Miss Riya becomes the manager. Once you find this out, you would be able to find out everything else automatically. Now, let's try to find out one more thing, that is, let's say assistant manager. So I say assistant manager is manager's grandson. Now, cashier is a male stenographer's son-in-law. So cashier is married, he cannot be bachelor. And he has to be, he is a son-in-law, so he has to be male. Now, how many male members remain? Rakesh remains, Ramesh remains and Radhe remains. These two are female, so I remove those. Okay. Of which cashier is male stenographer's son-in-law. Now, cashier is a male stenographer's son-in-law, so he is not bachelor. So, he cannot be Rakesh. So, I ignore Rakesh here. Now, male stenographer's son-in-law, and this is another important statement is assistant manager is manager's grandson. So assistant manager cannot be Mr. Radhe, who is the neighbor. Okay, so Mr. Radhe cannot be assistant manager. Now who remains with the cashier? So he is a male stenographer, and the son-in-law of who is a cashier. So Ramesh is 20 years old. He is younger in age. So he can be a son-in-law, but he cannot be the stenographer. So the Ramesh becomes the cashier here. And who becomes the stenographer? Now two males and two positions. So assistant manager and stenographer is left. Now since Radhe cannot be assistant manager, Rakesh would be the assistant manager and Radhe would be the stenographer. Once I have this, I am left with two girls, Radhika and Reena. Okay, Radhika and Reena left. Now there is a statement, Radhika is a teller's stepsister. That means Radhika is not a teller. So who becomes the teller is Reena, and Radhika becomes the clerk. I hope that is clear. A very simple problem, but the language is confusing, the relations are confusing. So if you are able to systematically solve it, you would be able to solve the questions to accuracy. So very, very important, you apply a little logic besides what is directly mentioned in the question paper.